Hey y'all, welcome to Back to Basics with Crystal. So I came out to the garden today to plant some onions, some more onions, and just found that the ground is just too soaking wet. We've probably had a good 2 weeks of solid rain almost every day, and it's been cold. Today it's like a high of 76, so it's a nice day, but the ground is just too wet to work. Let me show you the lemongrass because now we're seeing green come up, which is super exciting. So let's go take a look at the lemongrass real quick. All right, here they are. Yay! Now I'll trim all of this back and separate these out. So here's another one coming back beautifully. Again, you're gonna trim it up and separate it out and make more plants. That one has not come back yet, but I'm not going to say it's not going to come back. We'll see. And then this big one over here decided to come back again. And then we've got 3 more over there that have not done anything. But y'all, check out the water. I can't do anything out here. Okay, so I decided that since I couldn't do any real work out there in the garden, that I would come in here and just kind of chit-chat with you guys a little bit about my plan. Now, gardening, like anything else you do in life, you absolutely have a plan. In a previous video, we talked about, finding out what zone you're in, buying the seeds, that sort of thing. So you've done all of that. Now you have your seeds. Maybe you've even got some of your seedlings started here. So what do you do now? Where do you put everything in your garden? For me, on placement in the garden, there's 4 factors on where I decide to put everything. So the first one is seed saving. Am I planning on saving any seeds from those particular plants? If you are planning on seed saving, you definitely don't want 2 different varieties, maybe let's say peppers. You don't want 2 different varieties of peppers growing right next to each other, because what will happen is they will cross-pollinate and you'll get a hybrid that you won't see until you plant those seeds the following year. So that's one. Okay, so the second one is plant rotation. Now, if this is a brand new garden for you, you really don't have to worry about it this year. So plant rotation, where I decide to put the plants kind of depends on where I put plants last year. If you have plants that are, they eat a lot of food, they absorb tons and tons of nutrients into the soil, you don't want to continue to plant plants like that in the same spot. Let's use corn as an example. Everybody knows corn is a big nutrient hog. I mean, it just takes and takes and takes out of the soil and doesn't put anything back. So the following year, you want to come back in with a soil fixer, like beans. Beans actually make their own nitrogen, little nodulars on the roots, and so you want to put something like that. Or maybe you want to go back with a light feeder, some sort of root crop, turnips, that sort of thing. So you want to follow a heavy feeder with either a light feeder or maybe a soil fixer, like a bean or something like that, something that's going to give back to the soil. So that's number 2, plant rotation. The third one is succession planting. Where I place things in my garden, I need to figure out how long it takes them to get to maturity. Let's use radishes, for example. Typically, radishes are pretty quick on growing. So if I plant a row of radishes, I know that in a couple of months, they're going to be completely done and actually probably consumed. So in that spot, rather than leaving it blank, I need to put something back over there. Now, radishes is a root crop, so it is a light feeder. So I can put that in an area where I grew corn and then follow that back up with maybe some beans or some kind of legume, something that's going to fix the soil. So that is succession planting, always making sure that something is planted in that spot, never leaving the ground bare. So that was number 3. And number 4, it's not so super important to me. I know it is to some people, companion planting. I'll link below a kind of like a guideline a website I found with a pretty good guideline. It's got some really basic information about companion planting, what to plant with who. We all know that beans and corn go really good together. There you have a heavy feeder and you have a soil fixer. And then also with that, the companion, the three sisters, would be something like a squash. So planting that all in one area, they would all help each other and kind of give back to each other. That is the art of companion planting. For me, I try to get things that will help each other close to each other, but it doesn't always happen. So what I look for in my companion planting guide is something that is, I don't want plants that are going to fight against each other. Just some plants absolutely do not get along. I've actually seen it before in my garden with tomato plants and what's another plant from the nightshade family, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, they really fought each other, and eventually the tomato plant lost. So when I'm actually looking at a companion planting, I am more looking at plants that are not going to get along in a space. And I usually try to keep those away. Corn and tomatoes don't typically get along into a space, so we're going to keep those separated by a few feet. And in my case, I'm doing everything kind of in 16-foot sections. So that's what mine will be separated to. So those are the 4 things that I kind of take into consideration when I'm actually planning out my garden. Okay, so just to recap, how I design my garden is based on 4 factors: seed saving, plant rotation, succession planting, and companion planting. And I take all those into consideration when I actually map it out on this piece of paper. Now, to be honest with you, this is probably the 4th one that I've done because I kept scratching out, and I couldn't read it. So this is the 4th and final proof. And what I do, how I do this is I sit down with a big old cup of coffee and I take all of my seed packets, and I then take some note cards, and on each note card I'll write the name of the plant, just like that. Okay? And I do that because maybe my seed packets are open. I bought very, very, very little seeds this year. I had a lot left over from last year, and I really wanted to kind of use up the seeds that I have because they absolutely do me no good in my seed bag. So I wanted to use them all up. I'm planting 8 different varieties of squash this year. I decided to go ahead and do that, and I'm doing a little experiment to see what variety of squash is going to do the best for me. But on these note cards, I write the name, and if I grew the plant last year, then I also make a note. This is a mild pepper. The Spanish mammoth is a mild pepper, and for me last year, they didn't grow mammoth at all. Nothing like the picture on the seed packet, nothing like the description. So we're going to give it another try this year before I absolutely scrap the whole Spanish mammoth in my garden and go with another seed. So now on the back of these is where all the lines are. My plan for this is I'm going to put notes. Maybe you can put the date that you planted the seeds, the date that you saw them germinate, or the first day you noticed them above ground. Maybe some special notes like they were an aggressive vine, or you know, the ants really liked this plant variety. You know, something to help you decide, do you want to grow this particular plant next year? So I take all of my little cards with, and this is all the varieties of different plants that I'm growing this year. It's almost embarrassing when you look at it. But anyway, so what I do is I take each and start a stack, and I put all the peppers in one stack, all the tomatoes in another stack. Oh, see over here, I wrote a note, old seed packet. Just in case I didn't have very good germination, I could then go back later on in the season when I can't remember and look back and I go, oh, well, that could be why I didn't have very good germination. You know, it's an old seed packet. So I take all of my squash, put it into a pile. Then I go through my list that I'll link below, and look for companion plants. And I'll decide in the garden where those different things go. Now, if I'm planning on saving seeds, I'll make sure that I don't have two alike plants planted right next to each other. I went ahead and separated everything out this year. Like I said, I have 8 different varieties of squash going into the ground this year. Now, squash, from my previous experience, is, I don't know, it likes to kind of sprawl out. So I also took that into consideration when planting plants around it. I made sure that I took a sprawling plant and planted it next to a plant that's maybe a vine that is a climber and it doesn't take up so much room. So I took things like that into consideration when I was doing my little list. And so this is how I plan. Just a sheet of paper with a bunch of lines. I did do this on the computer because I have a CAD program, but I filled it in all by myself. So that's how I plan for my garden. The next step, once it dries out, is actually taking and marking out my 16-foot rows. And it should, if my math is correct, should add up to this. We'll see. Well, I hope that you find this video informative, and if you have any questions, ask below and I'll try to answer you as best I can. And I can only kind of go with what my little knowledge is. Or if you have any advice for me, comment below. So, hope you found it informative. Go get you a piece of paper, get you some dollar store cards, and start planning out that garden. We're in zone 9A now, and we're just waiting on the land to dry up and we can actually start planting here. Kind of exciting. So, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye!